What's going on, Shadow Corner fam? It's your friendly neighborhood life coach, Sayen Gates. I hope that you are having a wonderful afternoon and even wonderful day. I know I brought you a lot of great guests, one that taught you about the difference between choices and decisions. I've also brought to you someone that deals with being a disruption in your life can either make you or break you. But right now, I have a guest who is a lot more sacred, so I can't just introduce her like anybody else. So in this, I want to do it right. So welcome back to another episode of Shadow Corner. Today, we're honored to share space with an extraordinary soul, a woman who doesn't just speak change, but embodies it. Roxanne is a powerful embodied conversationalist for conscious and disruptive leadership. Those willing to rise above the noise of division, debauchery, and systematic imbalance to co-create a unified, sovereign humanity. Roxanne is more than a guide. She's a global shepherd of unity consciousness, boldly dismantling toxic cultures and systematic fear through courageous conversation and conscious stewardship. She reminds us that true leadership isn't just about presence in the spotlight, but also construed in the shadows. Who we are when no one is watching. For over a decade, Roxanne has worked with the high-level decision makers across global organizations, both profit and nonprofit, challenging them to rethink how they serve, build, and lead with integrity, which we need that right now. Her work dives into the heart of ethical presence and reimagines leadership as sacred duty rooted in humanity. I keep tying my tongue today. Embodiment and reverence for Mother Earth. In this conversation, we'll be journeying beyond the surface changes in deeper soul work, which means being able to disturb the system, not just respectfully, but if needed, disrespectfully. Ladies and gentlemen, let's bring on Miss Roxanne. Hello, my love. How are you?
Hi, good. How are you?
I'm good. Today is a good day in the South.
It's a good day to have a good day.
Yes.
Love it.
So can you give us a background? She's like, for those new to working with you, or for those that haven't worked with you, how do you describe what you do in the world?
Absolutely. Thank you, Sayen, for, handing me the mic. I think a lot of the times when we think about what we do and what we don't do, it's really a level of service. And that level of service is really about impacting global leaders to affect change within not even just their communities, but within the worldly dynamics that they have connections within. And how do we do that? And how do we move through that? And how do we move with integrity? And how do we lead with integrity? How do we lead with human connection and global community at the center and at the epicenter of all of our conscious decisions as conscious leaders? And how do we affect change, and how do we bring sustainable presence and sustainable change for humanity by affecting the communities that we serve, and by affecting the countries that we serve, and by obviously, the international piece and the global pieces that we serve at that caliber.
Okay, so what life experiences or moments awaken your path as a conscious leader? and guide? Because I know this is not something that was, it could have been a pass of the baton, or like this is something that has been sacred with you for a while. Can you share that with us?
Yeah, absolutely. So ever since I was a little girl, I just had this tender knowingness that I was being called to serve. And I didn't know what that was. I knew that I was being called to serve humanity in some way at a really impactful level. And I just could never fully comprehend that as a child, what that looked like or what that would be or what the pathway would be to get there. I just knew that I had this burning feeling and this overall sensation throughout the entirety of just my soul presence that I was being asked to serve. And I remember going through my life and, really trying to find, my pathway and the academic route that I was going to take and how I was going to embody leadership and how I was going to embody my pathway. And I remember just, being encountered by family and friends and, trying to have that resonance with them. Like, do you have that burning feeling that you're being asked to do something, but you don't really know what you're like you're supposed to be doing? And they're like, well, I know I want to be a lawyer or a doctor. And I was like, okay, well, that's beautiful. But it was something more than that. That was more of a vocation that they were really, wanting in terms of like the academic path that they were choosing. And I just remember having this feeling and nothing that I did in terms of the academics that I went through. I did a lot of leadership programs, business administration, business, like masters in business and things of that nature. And nothing was, hitting that fulfilling spot. And I remember, my mom, ever since I was a little girl, I'd have these random strangers come up to me and they would just share their whole life story with me and they would, look to me for guidance and wisdom. And my parents were so like taken back, like, oh my gosh, like, what is going on here? Like, this is the child, you're sharing these things. But even like my parents, like they would ask me like what my thoughts were, what my feelings were, and what I thought would be best. And I was always kind of asked to give guidance in some way, even though I didn't, look at that as guidance. I just thought everybody did that. Like when you do something your entire life, you just, you think everybody does the same thing. Everybody listens, everybody gives guidance, like you don't know anything other than that. And I remember my mom telling me, like, you should really be a psychologist. You should really, be a therapist. Everybody comes to you for advice and guidance. You're always helping your family, your friends. And that just never spoke in the resonance in me. That didn't feel like that was the place that I was going to kind of fulfill what I was being asked. And I tried. I went through and I moved through the healthcare system and I worked, in a cancer center for almost 20 years. And then I worked in the educational section, for a long time at, in executive leadership. And I really kind of started taking the leadership path. And then I started, being a leader in nonprofit organizations and, profitable organizations as well in public sectors. And nothing was fulfilling what I was being asked to do. It was like I was happy because I had a lucrative salary. I was, doing well, what we think we should be doing for life, what we're told that we need to do in terms of the construct of life. That was, the measure of success. But I didn't feel successful within my own life, mastery path, not about the academic path, but my own life mastery path. And then my first near death experience kind of took place. And then it was like this earth shattering, moment of awakening. And as you know, we go through countless awakening periods and, dark nights of the soul and a lot of shadow work and a lot of, deconstruction of like our limited beliefs and all these elements. And I had to really embrace that for my first near-death experience. I really had to get to why I was doing everything that I was doing and why I had the belief systems and the values that I was placing on these elements to bring me happiness and success and fulfillment, when in reality, I knew that I was out of alignment with my soul purpose. I knew that I wasn't in the same pathway that I was meant to. It was part of the trajectory. It was part of the pathway that I needed to move through, but it wasn't where I needed to be stopping. And I was trying to prevent myself from moving forward. And it was, this huge self-discovery at that point. And then I had, 3 more near-death experiences simultaneously, one after the other, within a span of 2 years. So every moment of near-death experience brought me to a further understanding and a further awakening of, like, what are you doing? Are you happy? Are you this? Are you serving the way that you anticipated you were going to serve? And that's when, the trajectory started, shifting for me and really looking inward. How do I heal all of these, places that I have in the intellectual body, in the mind? Why are my belief systems the way that they are? Why are they constructed the way they are? Why are my patterns of beliefs? Why are my patterns of behaviors? All of these elements started coming to fruition on why I was choosing the paths that I was choosing to be in the places that I was, right? Like you said, like you briefly touched on before we jumped into this, is that everything in life is a choice. We have so many choices. Every day we have thousands of choices we need to make for our life. And I was choosing a pattern of behavior where I was allowing comfortability to precede the uncomfortability and the growth and the stretch to become the person that I needed to be, that I promised myself that I would be in this lifetime, right? Like that's the contract. So it was a huge place of self-discovery. And then, from there, I always was, and big into networking and connection building, and just had a lot of consulting opportunities and a lot of incredible networking opportunities with leaders, global leaders, community leaders, that we were actually able to shift a lot of the narratives of just their own ideology, not just, in the mind, but the emotional, you know, pressurization that they have, and the physical pressurization that they have, and all of these elements that when we embody multidimensional healing as leaders, we serve from a place of conscious leadership, of awareness and acceptability, and we look for acknowledgement, and we look to be able to actionize based on these elements. And then that's where, a lot more body of work had come into fruition. And obviously I went through my own healing path for several years, and still going through that healing path. As you know, it's never over. And that was like that point where I realized, like, this is where the fulfillment was coming, because now it was a global impact that was happening, not by me, but by who was choosing to show up in the presence that they chose to show up for the communities that they serve and for the global, platforms that they serve.
Okay. So that's something that I know that we do carry similar, because my awakening happened around two canon events, where it's like the first one was when I was 12. For those that have been with Shadow Corner for a long time, season 1, I explained like my path from now all the way from when I was in Christianity, that it was not just me awakening. It was me making a choice to be able to do my soul's purpose without any interruptions or any shedding or anything else. And that's where we meet center. So my question in this situation is, what does it mean to have embodied integrity to you, and why is it so much of a true foundation to leadership? Because I know that we look at the world now and we have this innate sense that, not that somebody owes us anything, but they at least should do the right thing. So what does embodied integrity mean to you, and why is it a foundational truth for
You know,
leadership?
yeah, absolutely. Embodied integrity is that we can't lead with integrity if we don't embody integrity within ourselves. So integrity is, do we say what we say we're going to do, and do we do what we're going to actually, vocabularize that we're going to do? Are we going to be in the integrity of our word? Are we going to be in the integrity of our honesty and of our transparency and of our disruption of what is actually not serving humanity? And there's a lot of elements that happen with integrity. Are we living in integrity? Are we living in the truth of what comfortability is and what we think, that people find acceptable in terms of perception? Are we living in the honesty of our own truth? And that's when we come into that embodied integrity. Are we living in truth within ourselves? Are we being truthful to ourselves? And are we being honest with ourselves? And are we leading from a place that we're embodying that? if I am out there and I'm trying to put good into the community and I'm, telling people that they should live, an honest life and they should live a good life and that they should honor their neighbors and they should honor the cultural dynamics that are happening, in their communities. And then behind closed door, I'm running and I'm, being out of the integrity of what I am saying or how I am choosing to lead. That is not being in the integrity of our embodiment. That's not being an embodied integrity. We're not being in the honesty of ourselves. So when we are being in that place of leadership, it's important that how we are perceived as leaders in the community is actually how we perceive ourselves as leaders inside of our own home, within our own dynamic, within our own self dynamic. And when we're leading from that place, that's leading from a place of empowerment. We're leading from a place of experience, and we're leading from a place of a path that has been walked and that has been honored and that is in the integrity of what we're choosing to lead with. Doesn't matter if it's a service, doesn't matter if it's a product, it doesn't matter what the element of how we're serving in that community basis or how, in the global basis is. Are we serving in integrity? Are we serving in that embodied integrity of where we perceive that integrity is? My perception is not going to be your perception, and your perception isn't going to be mine. But if I am going to go into a community, or if I'm going into a working dynamic and I'm leading, employees and things of that nature, and I'm telling them to lead with honesty, transparency, and integrity, as part of our missions and our values, do I actually live by those values? Do I actually live by the mission of what we state within that organizational department, section, overhaul kind of mission and values?
Okay. Excuse me, love. So let's shift gears here. You speak about being a steward to revolutionary and evolutionary change. What does that look like in real life within ourselves, communities, and systems? Because I know right now we're going through a very drastic change. In the words of my friends, the world is on fire. All they had to do was add gasoline and kerosene, and we now have a pretty spark. And all we're doing is roasting marshmallows on the deception. So, the one thing I noticed in this whole work is the fact that everything, as far as what we used to know, is being revealed. A lot of things that we thought were base knowledge or truth is not truth anymore. So, and then we have those of like minorities standing up for what they believe in. So what does that look like in real life within ourselves and our communities and systems right now, at least in your
Absolutely. And it's really important as we become into conscious leadership and when leaders are consciously aware of what perceptions and perspectives are there, that we're not leading from a place of those perceptions and those truths. We're leading from our inner truth. And when you lead from your inner truth, right, your inner knowingness, as you know, right, we have been spoon fed information intentionally, as we know. There's a lot of divisiveness. There's a lot of segregation. There's a lot of things that are happening throughout the world dynamic. But at the end of the day, we only have the power of how we choose to be in the world that we are presently in. And we chose to be here in this timeline to either help shift a narrative or to help add to a narrative. So when we look to these elements and when we look to what is happening around us, that is our perception of the world. But my perception of the world is that it's absolutely beautiful. And I can see a lot of love and I can see a lot of things that can exude and can grow and can expand from this. There's always going to be polarity and there's always going to be duality in the earth. That's just, unfortunately, that's how the planet, I'm not going to kind of go into the reference, but planet Earth wasn't always a planet of duality or polarity. It was actually a planet of instillment, peace, love, pureness, right? So when we look at the duality and we look at the polarity, if we choose to lean into the narratives that are disempowering, then we are disempowering communities. But if we're leaning into the narratives that are empowering communities and we're showing by the state of being, the way that if we want to contextualize this and exemplify this, is that If you go to a grocery store and your emanation in that grocery store and your state of being is love and you're unconditionally being met with anybody that you come into connection with, either it just be a warm smile or a hello, all of these elements, that exchange right there is a state of being, right? We can speak, we can say that we want to change, but at the end of the day, are we the change? Are we being the change? It's the state of being that actually affects any real change. So when we are community drivers and we're community leaders and global leaders, are we actually in that state of being? And are we living from a perception of fear, scarcity, and lack, which is not knowingness, which is not purity, which is not divine essence, that is not primordial essence when we're living in those states of being. When we're spoon-fed information and then we discover that, elements were lies and all of these things, of course they are. There are so many elements that are, created and constructed throughout the world to disempower us, to take us out of our creational abilities. And if we are going to sit in hate, or we are going to sit in disgust or resentment or frustration or sadness or depression or anxiety or fear, we are not living in a place of empowerment of creational abilities of how we can actually create change within our own life dynamic and within our own community dynamic. So we, again, coming back to that place of choice, we choose how we want to perceive and we choose what perceptions we're willing to take in order to actually be in that state. So if we want to choose something different for the way that we want to show up, it's really, really easy to get intoxicated by, devaluing systems like social media, the news. All of these elements are there to disempower. They're not here to empower you. If they were here to empower you, the energetic exchange from that would be to leave that and to feel empowered in the choices that you're going to make for your life. They're going to make you feel empowered for the life that you want to create. But that's not what they're designed for. They're designed to take away the energy. It's an energetic exchange. It's a transaction, right? We're transactioning something that we really aren't in the congruency of. Our knowingness knows when you go on that and the exchange afterwards, you feel drained, you feel fatigued, you feel almost depressed. There's a lot of anxiety, there's comparison, there's competition. It's all about devaluing one another. It's not about adding value to a life. So when we look at the exchanges that are around us, what are we choosing to tap into? What are we choosing to lean into? And what are we choosing to embody? And at what cost? At what cost are we willing to choose whatever that exchange might be? And a lot of the times, like, we think that it's just entertainment or that it's just, passing time. But is the exchange actually leaving us in a place of adding value, or is it detracting value? And that's where we have to come into that realism and
So
that knowing that.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, and that knowingness, right? It's that knowingness, your body and your intuitive knowingness and your soul is like, I don't like this, but I'm going to do it because there's a curiosity, right? The curiosity kills the cat. The curiosity is there that we're intrigued and we want to, discover and we want to explore more. But at the end of the day, what is the exchange worth? What is that cost of doing it actually worth to our energy? And where does it put us in terms of the emanation of our vibrational frequency, of our output, and in our state of being? And that's where change happens. That's the change disruption. How do we disrupt patterns of behaviors that do not serve us? And how do we be honest and in integrity and in our knowingness of what actually doesn't serve us, instead of being in the comfortability of what we know?
And I know that for those of you that are tuning in, hello, we are here with Miss Roxanne that is dropping gems every second. So to put this in notion, if you've never heard of, and I'm talking to the audience, like if anybody that's never heard of social contracts or anything, I do have a podcast episode on that in season 1 of Shadow Corner that talks about the social contracts, whether that be contractual between the person that's in front of you or contractual when it comes to society. It's defined as being able to know what you will and will not allow through that contract and your interaction with people. So when you talk to others or when you have like simple interactions with others, there is a contract being developed there. because you either engage or you don't. So if you're needing a refresher, I'm just letting everybody know about that. So as you jump back in, and I call you a sacred disruption, because you allow people. No, it's like you allow people to be able to, you give them space to be able to be, not only be themselves, but you also allow them to show rather than telling people. So my question is, how do you help leaders dismantle the toxic culture of it without falling into the same energy yourself? Because like I know you have to ground yourself. I know you have to get back to nature, because like you're not just doing podcasts all the time. You're gonna have to do your part. So how do you level yourself out and then still help out other leaders to do this?
Absolutely. And I think, there's this incredible thing that we call boundaries, and it's really important that we have those energetic boundaries. And when we're stepping into spaces, it's important to understand whose energies is whose and who belongs with what in terms of energetic resonance and disposition, and how do we clear and how do we cleanse and how do we keep our energy clean and our exchanges clean. How do I not leak all over you and how do you not leak all over me is a really important part of those teachings, because it shows us accountability and responsibility over our own energetic fields and over our own energetic dispositions. And when we're in these places of healing, it's how do we hold the space without holding the energy and having the energy integrate into our energy field. And that's taught, we've been taught that through our native traditions for so many years, but also through channeled information. How do we protect our energy fields? How do we keep divine principle there at this place of inner stillment, inner peace, and not being involved and immersed into other people's energetic fields? Because that is not a body of work that is sustainable. That is very draining, and that can make somebody very, very sick. If anybody that knows energy work, if you start absorbing other people's energy or leaky energy, you start getting very ill yourself, because energetics need to go somewhere. It's just, that's the scientific measure of it. That's quantum science. So it's important that we are always clearing and we're always setting, very firm boundaries in terms of what those energetic exchanges are going to be. As a leader in terms of conscious behavior, we need to be responsible in self-practice. And that's really important to me. How do I need to be in a place of not emotional dysregulation, but emotional regulation? How do I need to be in a place of inner peace, inner stillment at that point zero, where all my centers of intelligence are in alignment and I'm in a place of harmonification, and I'm not in a place of dis-ease or discomfort or discombobulation when I'm in sacred practice or holding sacred spaces. I am human. I am going to feel some levels of my emotional body, but I don't allow it to dysregulate all of my multidimensional being. I honor the emotion that's coming through. If I choose to have an emotion after, holding space, if I need to release tears that are there, if I need to release anything, I allow that to happen, even from my own personal exchanges and my own personal experiences that I undergo. So it's important to keep ourselves clear and clean and to be consciously aware what needs my awareness, what needs my attention, what needs my tenderness, what needs my grace, what needs, acceptance, what needs to be released. All of these pieces come into that.
Okay. So the next one I have for you is what does it mean to be a citizen of Mother Earth, and how can that awareness shift you to lead and live? Because I know that we all say that we care about Earth, because let's face it, we live here, we get our bounty from here, our oxygen, all of our energy, whether it's circulated through just existing, from music to anything. A lot of people don't know that vibration goes as far as not just you breathing, not just you sleeping or anything else. The vibration goes as far as like when you dance, when you move your body, or when you interact with others. That type of thing can set the tone of what Mother Earth can feed us and what she can take from us, so that way we can be whole. So how can we not only be good students to her, but also be global leaders for her?
Absolutely. And there's this piece that there's an earthly dynamic and there's a primordial dynamic of, the omniversal energies as well. And not just, our universal energy, but omniversal and the earthly energies. And when we look at energy, and I am part Native American. So, we're a tribal community here called the Métis people. So Mother Nature, Earth Mother to us is very, very important. She is critical of all the elements, all of the elements of nature, fire, wind, water, earth, everything equals and has equilibrium and harmonification in its natural filtration systems for our Earth Mother and for Mother Earth. So it's really important that we understand that when we are on Mother Earth, when we are here on Earth, we are always in a place of transmutation. And even no matter what that exchange is, we're always transmuting energy. And Mother Earth is such a beautiful conduit to be able to restabilize us with all of her elements, with all of the elements of nature, all of the soul that exists and expands around us. The homes that we live in have soul, have energetic resonance. The mics that we are speaking in right now, the exchanges that we're having virtually right now are all soul essences of Mother Earth, because they wouldn't be in creational existence on this earth if it didn't come from Mother Earth. So they all hold residual, they all hold energetic vibration and energetic disposition. How do we honor everything? How do we treat everything with respect and with integrity? If from the animal kingdoms, from the insects, from everything that is around us, how can we look at it as one instead of, a disgust or like beneath us or all of these elements, when no life is more important than another life? Every life carries meaning. Every soul essence carries meaning. So when we are stewarding from the earth, we are stewarding from a place of empowerment, that we know that we are collectively working with Mother Earth on a day-to-day basis to be in the place that we are in, the embodied leadership that we are in. And we can't do that. We don't have a place to walk on if we are not here on the earth. So how do we honor that, and how do we respect that? Not just, by not polluting and things like that, but how do we respect even the physical pieces that we have in our home and treat it with respect, care, and integrity? I know it sounds really bizarre when we don't know that all of these pieces actually have soul. When we go into a home, when you're about to buy a home, you feel the soul resonance of the land. You feel the soul resonance of the home. Does this house have soul? Does this house have energy? I like the energy of the house. Do I like the way that the light hits the house, why the sun comes in? All of these elements are part of the Earth Mother and part of the solar universe. So when we look at these elements, it's really important that we're embodying that and that we're honoring that, and that we're not coming from a place of, it's not our problem, it's not my concern, I'm not going to be here to see it. These are not just for us. This is for the generations after us to have this beautiful place that they can live, knowing that if Mother Earth doesn't want us here at any moment in time, she can rid all of us like she has for billions and billions of years. So how do we honor her pathway for allowing us to be here? And it doesn't mean that, we can't enjoy the parts of being in the physical life and, the linear life and in 3D, but how do we come from a place of honoring where we're not abusing, that we are actually using with purpose and that we're using with intention?
Okay, so if you could plant one seed of truth in the heart of every listener today, what would it be?
Mm. I would say, I think the thing that's coming to me, the strongest as I sit with this is, remember your childhood. And, sometimes we don't have the greatest childhood, but we do have innocence in childhood, and we do have curiosity, and we have imagination, and we have creativity, and we have this beautiful thing that we call curiosity and exploration. And I really would like to leave that seed, is to come back to that place, of curiosity and exploration, of just knowing yourself better and understanding and understanding yourself a little bit better, and following your own inner knowingness and not what everybody else tells you that you should know, or from data points or statistics, what actually feels in the congruency of you, and where are you honoring yourself and where are you not honoring yourself, and where are you in congruency and where are you not in congruency with yourself.
Okay. And where can people find you so that they can get more gems from you?
Absolutely. So
I know
anybody,
this is the way. Now I know not my podcast is not the only way to get you. So
yeah, anyone can find us on theilluminationretreat.com.
okay. And I will give you the question I give all my lovely guests that always gives me a really good conscious meaning. If you could say something to your younger self, your older self, or basically anywhere in space, time, and existence, what advice would you give them or what would you say to them?
I would say believe in yourself and trust that you know.
I love that. Sweet, simple, and to the point. Well, thank you, Miss Roxanne. We truly do appreciate you coming on our show and giving us these gems, so that way we can be better stewards, not just to Mother Earth, but also to ourselves and to the communities that we serve, and that we know how to stand 10 toes down in what we know, rather than what we're given.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sayen, for having me. It was an honor. Thank you.
No problem. Alrighty, good people. So to wrap it up here, just wanting to let you know that in this lifetime right now, we're seeing a lot of change. Like I said, one of my friends said this is literally the world is on fire and they've had gasoline and kerosene and just said, hey, look at pretty colors, and we're roasting marshmallows on it. You have to stop. You have to start thinking about what type of community, what type of society, what type of world you want to live in from this point on. Because whether you know it or not, it's here. Change is here. And we have to be the stewardess to that. Whether it be to our thought leaders, whether it be to like those in Congress, whether it be for people that just don't know and they're just following the crowd. You have to have your own mental consciousness when it comes down to this. And you also have to make sure that even after you've done all the fighting, the changes, and stood up for yourself and stood up for the little person or anything beyond, that you take some time to reflect. Seek Mother Earth. Make sure that you're grounded. Make sure that you're taking time for yourself. Self-care is the best care, because you cannot stand on weak foundation. Always has to be solid. But I hope that you enjoyed this episode, and I hope that you've got some gems to take with you. I will be going on a mini hiatus for about 2 weeks, so that way we can get some things organized over here. But as always, it is lovely to see you, my loves. So we will talk soon.